We do this every Friday and Saturday at 6 p.m. on Fridays and 3 p.m. on Saturdays. And for the next hour or so, I will be answering all of your questions about history and social sciences, as we do, like I said, twice a weekend, and extra times, bonus times for our members if you become a member of the channel, and for holidays. We have our live stream lecture tomorrow on the Soviet Union at 4 p.m. Please join us for that. I'm really looking forward to it, and looking forward to seeing all of you there, as I will hopefully be able to wrap up the Soviet Union and talk about Russian history since the collapse of the Soviet Union, which is a tall order. 100 years of history, just a lot to unpack, but hopefully I'll be able to do that successfully. But I hope you are all having a really, really good weekend, and I'm glad that you've chosen. We're grateful. We're very grateful and honored that you've decided to choose to spend some of it with us here at the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel, where we do history in a friendly, neighborly manner 24/7, 365 or 366 days a year on topics all throughout world history, past and present. Um, and just a reminder at the top of the channel, it's the top of the hour or whatever, top of our broadcast. We are not a political channel. We are not a religious channel. I do not share my political or religious beliefs. I share my historical perspectives of those things, usually for a super chat, which we would appreciate. All the money that you give to the channel goes back to help the channel become the best version of itself it possibly can be. But again, we're willing to discuss a bunch of different historical topics all over the world with you guys, as always. So please think about things you would like to discuss, and please drop those topics, comments, or questions in the chat. And if you don't have any, just enjoy, sit back and relax as we go and deep dive into different types of history all throughout the world. So um, I'm going to, let me see here. I'm looking for a lot of great historical imagery for my background today. Um, and I love what I'm seeing. What can I pick? I use so many different historical backgrounds. Um, let's see, we used something Indian yesterday. Um, and then we will do, uh, all right, we'll do this one. This is Russia in the early 17th century during the Polish invasion. Believe it or not, in the 1600s, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth was the premier power in all of Eastern Europe. And they also invaded and almost successfully conquered Russia. Only an improvised Russian rebellion, a revolt by the peasantry and all the different classes of Russia was able to save Russia from coming under the dominance of the powerful Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, with the Polish king declaring himself the Russian Tsar. This was avoided by the Russian revolt, which eventually led to the placing of the Romanovs on the Russian royal family, ending Smutnya Ravenia, the time of troubles. Russian history is my expertise, and so I've got two series on Russian history, one on the czars and one on Russian history in general. And you can also please be sure to check out my live stream lecture tomorrow about Russian. That series continues. We did one on early Russian history, the Romanovs, the Russian Revolution. Now we're on to one about the Soviet Union. So, and please follow us on our social medias. You can read my articles, get bonus content on Patreon and stuff like that. And Discord, we have extra conversations and stuff. So if you want to talk with us and get to know us, me and my moderators, please join us on Discord. And my wonderful moderator, Hars, has his own YouTube channel where he does really good edits of US presidents. Um, so, did the CIA with President Kennedy solve the Cuban crisis without a war? Yes. What was the worst hurricane in American history? What's the story on it? Katrina is pretty bad. There was one in Galveston, the Galveston floods of 1908, I think, that's considered to be somewhat worse. Those are a couple of the ones I know off of the top of my head. The Galveston floods took more lives proportionally, was more damaging and devastating than Katrina, but Katrina is pretty much considered to be the epitome of natural disasters when it comes to hurricanes that affected the United States. Of course, that was in 2004. I'm pretty sure it was 2004. I was quite young when it happened. Most of us were alive when it happened. And devastated mainly Louisiana. The city of New Orleans was traumatized. Thousands of people died. It was absolutely terrible. 2005. Yeah. So, anyways, it also, of course, devastated neighboring places in Mississippi and Alabama. It hit several different states, but Louisiana and New Orleans in particular got it worse. Government mismanagement of the situation made it an even greater disaster than it had been. And of course, there was a huge, huge issue with poor and underprivileged areas being affected more heavily and not getting the resources and support they needed in order to survive. Why do you believe the CIA could have eliminated JFK? Because I believe the CIA wanted a more extensive war in Vietnam, and I believe Kennedy was opposed to a war in Vietnam. I think the military-industrial complex was rolling at that time and was doing everything it could to get the United States into as many anti-communist conflicts as it possibly could. They had their fingers in way too many pies, and Kennedy wanted less of that. He wanted more of a peace through strength approach. The Peace Corps is a great example of this. I think he conflicted with a lot of powerful people who wanted things done. Yeah, the whole government response to that was a complete joke. Then you had the FEMA director coming out saying it's all the local authorities' fault. Yeah, it was a blaming each other. It was a really, really terrible, terrible moment in U.S. history. Katrina was a disaster. Um, so, anyways, by the way, Kennedy was assassinated right after Eisenhower warned about the military-industrial complex and right before the Vietnam War. Well, they were all kind of going around at the same time. The U.S. already had military advisors on the ground in Vietnam, as I was talking about yesterday. So, anyways. Mm. I'm taking a sip of coffee. I hope you've got something warm or nice to drink and are relaxing and enjoying the history and social studies that we do on this channel every Friday at 6 and Saturday at 3, as well as our live stream lectures. We have long and short form content available for you at all times here at the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. We also have a TikTok and Patreon with bonus content available. Thoughts on the use of the word silly from 500 years ago? I don't know how it was used 500 years ago. How does the US draft system work? Well, now it's called selective service, but the draft system basically was a way to make sure that 18 to 45-year-old men were able to be called up by a lottery to serve in the US military in different armed conflicts, most notably the last World War, what you call World War II, and I consider to be World War III. There's also, of course, Korea and Vietnam, where it was utilized pretty notoriously in the latter, with obviously some very deleterious effects as people burn their draft cards and the whole idea of being forced to go and fight for the US government in a country so far away in a cause that seemed hopeless really, really turned off a lot of young people to the fight in Vietnam in the 1960s. So there's a quick summary of it. And then Richard Nixon did away with the draft when he was president, fulfilling one of his campaign promises when he ran in 1968. And the draft basically, and now it's a selective service, which basically says that all young men, if a draft is brought back, can be drafted if it's ever deemed necessary. So if another world war were to happen, the draft would probably be reinstated. Conscription has been part of military service. Conscription as compulsory military service has been part of human history for an extremely long time, particularly in times of great tension and warfare. Hmm. Uh, what were the schools of thought that our founding fathers believed in? Name two of the founding fathers' philosophies, ideologies that are most interesting to you. Well, they were some of them, almost all of them had a Lockean influence. John Locke was the English philosopher from the 17th century who, reflecting upon the Glorious Revolution, believed that natural rights were rights given by God and that the state had a right to protect, not to give, and that people in a state of nature needed government in order to protect them from danger and from evil, but the government's job was to secure these rights, not to be the provisionary or overseer of them. And Madison writes this in the Federalist Papers: "If men were angels, there'd be no need of government." In the Lockean model, the state of nature is one of peace, but people fall into chaos and disorder and do not follow the natural law. So, because of that, they need government in order to make sure that their rights, like life, liberty, and property, are protected. The pursuit of happiness that Jefferson mentions is Aristotelian political philosophy. Aristotle, whose death day is today, we do daily born, died, and daily events on this channel all the time. Well, every day, basically. Jefferson kind of borrows that. Um, there's a little bit of Rousseau and the idea of the social contract and the general will of people influencing the rise of democracy in America, and the idea of popular sovereignty that kind of starts with the Jeffersonian Democratic Republicans and then really gets going with the Jacksonian era in the early 1830s and 40s throughout the early 19th century. Um, but there's influences from ancient philosophers like Aristotle and Plato, and there's influences from Roman political government, British common law. Leviathan is obviously in the minds of many of the founders as they look at King George III more and more as a tyrant. Leviathan is the famous work that advocated for an extremely strong uh, gov- uh, monarchical like figure to run the government in order to keep people in check. This was Thomas Hobbes. So there's Newton, there's Locke, there's Rousseau, there's Montesquieu, who believes in separation of powers and branches of government that are able to halt each other from getting too expensive. Excuse me, to halt each other from getting too expansively powerful. There's Voltaire, who believes in religious freedom and the importance of individual rights, such as the freedom of speech. So there's that as well. The Sand Creek Massacre, wasn't that of natives? I'm not 100% sure about it, Jeremy. Let me see. Do you think it was a mistake for Richard Nixon to abolish the gold standard in 1973? Well, the gold standard was already, the US had already been off of the gold standard. It was the silver standard that Nixon, I believe, took the US off of. Um, Probably. I mean, the only thing holding up the US dollar now is trust and support in the US dollar. Um, yeah. Do you think it was a mistake for Britain to abandon the Commonwealth and go into the EEC? I'm not sure. Hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure. That would lend towards the Brexit argument. Um, Britain, after as their empire kind of falls apart, creates a commonwealth of nations that are kind of all interdependent and interconnected and working together for economic and political rights and opportunities. And kind of abandons this to eventually join the European Common Market, the European Common, the European economy, the European Community, and eventually the EU. And they've kind of struggled with this. And this is part of British history in a nutshell. How the British get to decide, because they are an island, how European they want to be, how involved in the state of affairs in Europe do they actually want to be. And this is something that has plagued the British Empire all throughout its history. Um, I don't know about the decision of destroying the post-war settlement. I don't know enough about it to share my opinion. Mm. So, other questions about history or social studies? We're 12 minutes into our live stream Q&A, where you can ask me anything you'd like about history or social studies. Again, we do this every Friday at 6 and Saturdays at 3. And yeah, we will be going until about uh 4:20, somewhere around there. You have no questions, only answers. My coffee is good. Personally, I think we should have stuck out the European community and stayed with the Commonwealth. Okay. Well, Harry, you're the expert in British history, so and please show some love to my moderators, Harry and Hars, who do such a good job for the channel. Let me see here. Yeah, everybody wants to talk about Iran. I mean, that's the big thing right now. So, what two beliefs by two founding fathers do you like the most? Mine or John Jay and Roger Sherman? I like Jefferson. Um, and I like the ideas in the Federalist Papers. I like the argument for for constitutionalism and federalism. I think it's a good idea. Um, I think those two philosophies, kind of Madisonian philosophy when he wrote the Constitution, mixed with the Jeffersonian ideas of strong individual rights, are really really important. So, um, yeah. Anyways, other questions. Yeah, everyone wants to talk about Iran. Everyone wants to talk about Iran. And I get it. It's the big issue right now. I can give you the history and explain exactly why these things are happening and how history is not repeating but rhyming. But everybody's obsessed with the Iran issue right now and wants my opinion on it. I'm not going to give my political opinion on this issue, but I can give you a lot of historical knowledge that will help you understand why this is happening and where this is coming from. And I'll basically sum it up very quickly. The United States got their fingers involved in the wrong pie. And what do I mean by that? During the Cold War, both the US and the Soviet Union were extraordinarily committed to the ideas of influencing foreign governments to become either more capitalistic or more communistic. And they did this through a measure of means. They did this through supporting certain types of governments, calling for revolutions, sending in spies and influencers, creating desertions, civil wars, all sorts of problems. Um, and Iran was considered to be an ally of Great Britain and the United States in the Middle East that the Soviet Union wanted to influence. The fear of communism loomed large for the US, especially in the early days of the Cold War, when nuclear war and annihilation of the vast majority of people on the planet wasn't completely off the table. It really wasn't until the late 1960s that didn't seem to be much of an option anymore. But in the 1950s, this still seemed to be on the table. The Soviets had the bomb. They and their allies were more than willing to fight the United States militarily, as they had done in the Korean War. So the United States was leery of any Soviet influence in the spread of communism. The British had been heavily influential in the you're watching in Iran the in the 50s a mixing of two historical narratives. that are extremely important. The post-colonial relationship between the British and French and the Middle East in the 19 after the Great War, and the U.S. and the Soviet Union fighting for world domination in the Cold War. So the British and the French, after the defeating the Kaiser and winning the Great War, basically decide that they're going to divide up the Middle East because the Ottoman Empire has fallen apart, and these different territories should be mandated by the British and the French. They believe that they have the rights to basically say what kind of government should function in these different areas. In Iran, a Shah, a ruler, a king, which is an ancient term for the ruler, is set up and becomes a good ally of the British and British Petroleum in particular, which is interested in Iran's large oil deposits. Um, in 1953, an Iranian nationalist with socialistic sympathies named Mohammad Mossadegh had been the prime minister for 2 years. He moved to nationalize the oil fields, believing that the British and the Americans had way too much influence on the business of Iran itself. The Shah at the time was a man named Mohammad Reza, who will come up again. The United States, the British convinced the CIA and the United States that Mossadegh was going to ally with the Soviet Union, and the U.S. would lose a huge ally with the largest population in that region. Um, if they did not act. So the CIA couped Mossadegh and threw him out of power. And from then on, the U.S. had their thumb on the scale of the relationship with Iran. 26 years later, an Iranian revolution overthrew the Shah, the king of Iran, and the inaction of U.S. President Jimmy Carter basically said that the people of Iran should be able to decide whatever they wanted. Carter didn't understand how the world works. I will go to my grave believing that. And this basically led to a lot more chaos because all of a sudden now the Soviet Union, um, or all of a sudden, the people of Iran who were trying to fight for liberalization and democracy and the end of the Shah's oppressive regime were basically thrown out on their ear. And the Ayatollah of Iran took over, the mullahs took over, and turned Iran into a theocracy. And the supreme leader has been basically a dictator of Iran ever since then. They have been a repressive, radical Islamic state committed to the destruction of any sort of enemy of theirs in Islam, as well as Western nations, especially the United States and its great proxy ally in the region, Israel. Um, Hatred of Jews, hatred of America is common in Iran and has been ever since then because the United States did not intercede to help its ally, the Shah, stay in power, basically letting the chips fall where they may. The United States didn't intervene for once, and it actually was a huge mistake. So, um, basically, and if you wonder what's going on in Iran today, that's basically what it is. The United States is overthrowing and getting rid of a government that was set up in the 1970s. They acted in the 50s to overthrow a government that was unfriendly to them. They didn't act in the 1970s to preserve a government that was friendly to them, and now they're acting to overthrow another unfriendly government to them. Although things probably would have been far much better if 73 years ago the U.S. just decided to let Mossadegh do whatever he wanted. However, things also probably would have been much better if Jimmy Carter had decided to intercede and keep the Shah in power. This is not to say that Mohammad Mossadegh was a great leader and that the Shah was a great man. These people, the Shah in particular, was particularly repressive of his people, but it was a much better, especially in terms of Western ideas, geopolitical situation for Iran in the 1970s than it is today. And this background is the Kremlin. It is Moscow under siege by the Poles at the beginning in about 1610 when the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth invaded and almost overthrew the Russians and the Polish king almost became the Russian Tsar. The Poles got very, very close to conquering all of Russia in about 1612. An insurgency of Russian rebels was able to overthrow them and bring the Romanovs to power in 1613. But yeah, this is Russian right there. That's the Kremlin. That's the walled fortress that protects the inner sanctum of the Russian government. History is just a story told by somebody that wasn't there. Well, I mean, there's some truth to that, but there's lots of people that were there that write that down. That's why we have primary sources. There are lots of people who leave records. That's why we have written sources in archaeology and things like this. Um, and photography has made that even easier. Is there a connection between Glasnost in '89 and the invasion of Kuwait in 1991? No, totally different regions of the world. What do you think the biggest widely believed lie in the last? What do you think was the biggest widely believed lie in the last 20 years? It's a little more than 20 years ago, but that the Iraqis had WMDs that threw the U.S. into all sorts of terrible decisions in the Middle East. So in history, what would you justify to be the most accurate government that works for the best? I'd say it's limited government that protects the people, ensuring people agree with the government style. I'm not going to speculate. There's so many that have been tried. Benevolent dictatorships also work pretty well. Democracy has its place. I'm a Westerner, so I probably have a very different approach to this than someone from the East would. So the theocracy keeps and kept morality in line. Yeah, it also threw gay people off of buildings, forced women to cover their entire bodies almost, and was extraordinarily repressive of religious minorities and anyone who spoke out against the government. Make no mistake, no matter what you think of what the United States has done by invading Iran, Iran is not some nice country just trying to live their best life. It is a terrorist state run by radical Islamic terrorists who are committed to the destruction of everything Western, everything Christian, everything Jewish. And and everything secular. Radical Muslims do not like secularists. They do not like people who are sympathetic to them on the left side of the political spectrum. They see them probably more so as useful idiots. Yeah. Well, Christ definitely existed. I don't know why we're bringing this topic up again, but whether he rose again, that's another issue. The USA is undefensible. Well, whatever you think of the USA's actions in attacking Iran, and whether you think the war is justified or silly or stupid or great or who knows or how long it'll go on, the United States is moving to attack a geopolitical rival in the region that is committed to its destruction. There's no doubt about that. They also are one of the largest sponsors of radical Islamic terrorism in the world. Now, these are narratives. These narratives just so happen to be true. So, um, I want to talk about. So you wanted questions about Iran. I talked about the issues with Iran, and now people are bringing up the Jewish thing again. I don't know why Egon got timed out. I don't think he should have gotten timed out. I would have loved. He said that Zionists are radicals. Well, again, this is something that I've talked about on the channel quite a bit. Not because I want to, but because everybody brings it up. People think I'm too obsessed with the Jewish issue. Well, that's because everybody else is obsessed with the Jewish issue. The only people who care more about this than Netanyahu and Donald Trump are the anti-Semites and anti-Zionists on the internet, the pro-Pallies and people like that. They're more obsessed with Israel than the Israelis are. I've had plenty of Israelis and Jews come onto this channel and say, yeah, we don't like some of the things Israel does, and war is nasty, and we don't like the death of Gaza and children. They have a more nuanced position than just Jews bad, Jews bad, Jews bad, which is exactly what we were dealing with yesterday. Zionism historically is a movement for the Jewish people to have their own state, and eventually they decided that it would be a state in the Levant, their ancient homeland. And this led to the migration of many Jews from Eastern Europe back to Israel in the late 19th and early 20th century. And it's as simple as that. USA killed thousands upon thousands of civilians in Iraq and Afghanistan on a false pretense. Yes, that's true. This is foolish, devastating war. Afghanistan wasn't as much of a false pretense, but it was an unsuccessfully waged, horribly mismanaged war. Um, Look at our history in the Middle East. Yeah, the United States doesn't have a great record in the Middle East. I'm not saying, okay, so this is where your foolishness is showing. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be mean, but it's very foolish to listen to somebody explain why the US is in Iran and who they're going after in Iran, which is all 100% accurate, by the way, and then to say, well, that means he's in favor of the war. I never said I was in favor of the war. I never said this was the right decision. I am saying why they are doing this, and I gave an entire historical summary, exactly in detail, as to as to what happened in Iran. Most of the people who are complaining about the U.S. and Iran or praising the U.S. actions in Iran don't know who Mohammad Mossadegh is. They barely know who Mohammad Reza Pahlavi is, the Shah who was overthrown in 1979. They don't know why he was overthrown. They don't know what the Ayatollah Khomeini actually did to the people who had helped him overthrow the government of the Shah. Nobody knows this because you don't care. Because you listen to people, you develop a narrative and you just accept that narrative and then you don't actually look into why are these things happening. I know the history of it, so I'm going to tell you the history of it in order for you to get a better, brighter, fuller perspective on what is going on. It's not as simple as it looks. There is no doubt that the Islamic Revolution, Islamic Republic, no matter how dangerous or paper tigerish you think it to be, is consistently opposed to the existence of the United States and Israel. There's no doubt about this. This is what they believe. They are proud to believe this. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard, although horrifyingly defanged by the actions of the U.S. in the last couple of weeks, um, and Israel, is still fighting, and most of it is because they are genocidal. You preach theocratic ideas of 12 Shia Islam, which is what is the Islam in Iran. 12 Shia Islam believes in the coming of the Mahdi. They believe in the last successor of Muhammad, last direct descendant of Muhammad, being the final successor to bring peace to the world. And you know what that looks like in the radical Islam of Iran and the Ayatollahs? That looks like the destruction of every Jew in the world and the control of the world, its dominance by Islam. So if you're a secularist, you probably don't want that. I'm not saying that they would ever be successful at that aim. I'm not saying that their ambitions are not too idealistic. I am saying that they are enemies. That is all I have said. China has antipathetic values and aims to the United States. That doesn't mean that the United States should invade China. Like the way people say Islam bad, right? What's the history of Thailand? Thailand's fascinating. It's a really cool place. The longest ruler in all of history ruled for 74 years. He was the king of Thailand. I think he was the second to last king of Thailand, by the way. Thailand was never colonized. The Mongols couldn't conquer it. The British and the French really couldn't colonize it. The Japanese did not went through it in the last World War instead of actually occupying it. It's the only country to have retained its sovereignty in Southeast Asia. Um, why suddenly anti-Semitism has become popular? Because people do not think in proper categories. They do not understand that there is a prolific difference between the government of Benjamin Netanyahu in one hand, the Israeli nation on the other, and Jews on the third hand. And these anti-Semite creeps have been talking in the corners of the internet, gathering their information, gathering their conspiracies, gathering their proof texts, and now they are throwing it out as their religion starts to grow. And yes, the way I interact with these people, it seems to me to be more than just an obsession. At this point, it seems to be basically its own religion. Anti-Semitism has grown into a religion of hate. Um, let me see. Zionists are religious extremists. Well, again, what is Zionism? If you're defining the extreme, I don't know if I mean people who bring that up, people who come into this channel and talk about Zionists being religious extremists, never talk about radical Islam. Never talk about radical Christianity or Hinduism for that matter. It's always Jews, 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 Jews. This is all they care about. But my point is that um, the problem with it is there's Zionists who are not like that, who just simply want an Israeli state in the Levant. And I think a lot of people are Zionists at that point. Let me see. Let's move past all of this. Do you think the lack of interest from the culture about black on black violence is what makes it so prevalent? That could be racism. It could be cultural issues. There's a lot to say about it. It's a kind of a hot button political issue. So I would say give me a super chat and I'll give you a deeper analysis about that. Um, so um, his narrative is the only valid viewpoint. Apparently, I never said that mine was the only valid viewpoint. I'm saying that mine is informed by history. Yours isn't. Was USA responsible for the Ayatollah Khomeini being empowered by putting the Shah and radical Islamist uh, well, the U.S. allowed the Shah to fall. Jimmy Carter basically believed that the people of Iran needed to determine their own fate, and they were about to determine their own fate, and then they were co-opted by a bunch of radicals because Jimmy Carter didn't understand how the world works, and he's not the only. And George W. Bush didn't understand how the world works. If you think I'm just bashing a Democrat, I'll bash a Republican too. It's not about politics. It's about not understanding history. It's not understanding the culture of the people that you are learning about. And the best way to understand their culture is to learn their history. It's not foolish if you take the leaders of Iran seriously. Witkoff reported on the pay negotiation they begged about how they had 60% enrichment enough for 11 bombs. It takes 1 week to go from 60%. I thought that they destroyed all of that last year. Why is this back if they didn't destroy it all last year? Unless that was a total lie and a stupid idea, which might have been. Why did Stalin agree to allow Germany to march on Versailles? Stalin didn't do that. Stalin. Well, that's the non-aggression pact. That's Molotov-Ribbentrop. Basically, Stalin decided not to attack the Germans, and the Germans, for the time, decided not to attack them. The Shah was overthrown because he tried to ignore religion. He established a secret police, disrespected religious scholars and institutions whenever he had the chance. I don't care. I know all of that. It doesn't. The Shah didn't deserve to get overthrown. And even if he did, the replacement was much worse than him. If the U.S. had backed him up, that family would still be in power, and most of the problems that are now in the current Middle East wouldn't be there. Hamas would not be able to exist. Hezbollah would not be able to exist without Iran. And I don't think the Shah was lining up to give money to radical terrorists who wanted to genocide Jews. Um, yeah. I thought USA's military capacities had gone down under Biden's term. USA gave up Afghanistan and didn't stop Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Then Trump came and took Maduro and took top guy Ayatollah. Well, again, the United States has its own military proclivities and strengths. And just because they weren't active doesn't mean that they're still not really, really strong. Um, Whose military capacity is more powerful, Russia or China? China. Um, the reason it wasn't colonized is because Britain and France couldn't agree on how they should split it, and because both of them thought it would be quite a good idea to keep an obedient puppet state in between them. Sounds about right. Um, they cut what I just said. I didn't do whataboutism. I didn't do whataboutism. I'm saying I have no problem talking about any radical extremist group. I'm saying that the people who come onto this channel who talk about radical extremist Zionist Jews who are worried about radical extremists in that religion seem to ignore the fact that there are many, 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 many more radicals surrounding them that want to destroy them and destroy you. Radical Zionists do not want to kill me. Radical Muslims might, especially after what they see on my channel about what I've said about the historicity of Islam. What if the UK didn't leave the EU? Would the UK have been in a better position? I don't know. Should we rebuild the third temple in Jerusalem? I'm hearing this nonsense more and more. You know, let's make something very, very clear from a historical perspective. The second temple was built by the Jews in the late 6th century BC. So that's the early decades of the 500s in BC. It's backwards because it's BC instead of AD. That temple was the temple of Jesus and his apostles. If you're a Christian, that's probably important to you. These are extremely important things. Um, my but regardless of all of the religious side of it, the Jewish second Jewish temple was destroyed by the Roman general Titus in 70 AD, ending the Jewish revolt in the region, and the Romans decimated it. Another revolt about 70 years later forced the Jews into another diaspora at the hands of the Romans. The area was renamed Palestina in order to mock them, and that is why it is still controlled by the Palestinians to this day. Or sorry, that's where the term Palestine comes from, by the way. Um, let me see. Um, so what's going on? I can't see. Anyways, my point being that the third temple, there is this idea that the Jews want to rebuild the third temple. In the 600s, Israel, that land that belonged to the Byzantines, was conquered by the Muslims. The Muslims built the Dome of the Rock in Al-Aqsa Mosque as the place where Muhammad supposedly took the night journey to heaven to meet Allah and see him face to face. This is the basis for the Islamic justification of building the Dome of the Rock. Jews are not allowed into Al-Aqsa Mosque. I don't even believe Christians are. The That is on the Temple Mount. The temple predated that. The Jewish idea of rebuilding the temple is a Jewish nationalist idea and basically kicking the Muslims out of there. People who say doing that would be a disaster are probably on the right track, but the reasons for why that's the case are because of how infuriating that would be to many Muslims in the region, not because the Jews don't have a right to have a religious building in land that they own. Um, so I don't know that the third temple should be rebuilt. I think it's too much of a hot button issue to really give my own opinion on. But the historical precedence is if you do not like colonization and colonialism, then you cannot like Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's a sign of Muslim dominance and colonization of that region, stealing it, conquering it. See, if we're going to talk about the U.S. stealing California from Mexico, then we should talk about the Arabs stealing the Holy Land, Israel, from the Christians and the Jews. And we should talk about them stealing Spain, and we should talk about them stealing Turkey, Anatolia, Asia Minor. People don't take the people who want to justify radical violent Islam never seem to understand the historical precedents because they don't listen to my channel of stealing land from Christians and Jews in the past. Apparently, that's okay. And then you can't comment on Islamic culture and them having Al-Aqsa Mosque. But it's totally unjustified for the United States to conquer Mexico and then pay for it, or conquer California from the Mexicans and then pay Mexico for it. It's nonsense. It's a double standard. If you really think about settler colonialism, which is what a lot of the people who hate the state of Israel like to bring up, then look no further than Al-Aqsa Mosque. And by the way, that's not me saying that Al-Aqsa Mosque should not exist. That's me saying that if you actually pay attention, if you're going to be consistent, you will have to say that that is a legacy of colonialism and conquest in the region and oppression. What's your view on God and which religion is most practical in today's world? I don't share my religious views. I don't. I believe in a deity of a higher power, but I don't share which one I think that is. What edit of mine did you watch if you remember? I don't remember. Yes, the British economy would be about 3% larger.
Ronald Reagan even said the Shah was the best. These Iranian dictatorships are the evil forces who want the Americans out of the Middle East. They killed 241 Americans in 1983 in Beirut. I'd have to agree with Reagan there. Not that Reagan did a great job handling that, and not that the Shah was a good guy, but you have to compare. This is the same thing. Saddam Hussein, really nasty guy. No doubt about it. Gaddafi, nasty guy. Mubarak, nasty guy. You know, dictators in the Leviathan theme that we were talking about earlier. But what was the alternative? The world is the world of the Middle East and is the people of that region, are they better off because of the destabilization and destructions of their government by US intervention or lack thereof in the case of Iran? Who replaced it? What do you replace it with? Democracy is not suitable for a tribal people, and most of the people of the Middle East are tribal. There's only one successful democracy in the Middle East, and you're not going to like which one it is. You can guess. Um, so to be fair, and by the way, I will catch up to the chat as soon as I can. There's a lot of good questions, and I want to answer them thoroughly and thoughtfully. Pretty good for America, Britain, and France, and all the rest of them to leave the Middle East to do what the Middle East does. Yes, that could work. I don't know. What about? Let me see. The more we intervene, the more. Yes, that's true. Well, you can blame the British and the French for that, Harry, because they're the ones that started it. Why is it Saudi Arabia? Because of Ibn Saud. Because the British basically told the Saudis, "Give us oil, and we'll put you in charge." Um, Let me see. Then there are terrorists in the US and sleeper cells. I'm not in danger of radical Muslims in the United States. The chances of being killed by a radical Muslim in the United States are so infinitesimal. It's absolutely absurd. That's a nonsensical issue. Yeah. Anyways, um, let me see. What else? Um, Hello, Scourge of YouTube comments. Um, what history explains why Sri Lanka's two biggest partners are the US economically and China politically? I don't know. I don't know everything. I said Aska. I didn't say asked. I said Al Aska. Let me see. What country hasn't stolen or dominated others' land and people? I'll wait. Well, exactly. That's my whole point. Uh, but my issue is that people who constantly complain about Western colonization, imperialism, and conquest, which certainly happened, and even on a greater scale than other places of the world because of Western technology and imperialism, never will admit that most of the Middle East was colonized, oppressed, and imperialized by the Muslims, the Ottomans, the Umayyads, the Abbasids, the Mamelukes. These people did not peacefully assume power in a peaceful transition of power. Radical Islam does not come to power. Violent Islam does not come to power in its earliest history through political election. In fact, I can't think of a single country in the world that has had seen Islam take over in a peaceful transition in its history. And to be fair, the Christians did the same thing. I'm very well aware of that. I will say that people who complain about the Jews want this much larger state of Israel and they want to control all of this land in Syria and stuff like that. I mean, these same people are supposedly pro-American, and America did the exact same thing. Every single country does the exact same thing. We have something that you have something we want, and we're going to do things to get it, and we're going to create false pretenses to get it. And everybody complains when Israel does it. Nobody complains when other countries do it. Well, Russia gets complaints when it does it. But there you go. How did Taiwan become a democracy? The Kuomintang, the nationalist side of China, after they were defeated, many of them fled there and created a democratic government friendly to the United States under Chiang Kai shek. Do you think Boris Johnson was a great prime minister? I think he's an unremarkable prime minister, but he's an unforgettable human being. He's so eccentric. They usually move the goalpost on non European colonialism and imperialism because racism. Yep, basically. He lied to the queen. He negotiated. Okay, whatever. Harry's just going off right now. You replaced Saddam Hussein with ISIS. Yes, who I didn't replace anyone. Good to see you, Shuriken. Given what's coming, what can you say telling us about the history of daylight saving time? Oh yes, tonight is daylight savings time. It was actually created as a way to save time and maximize work efficiency during the Great War. So the U.S. actually creates daylight savings time in about I think 1917. So as a way falling back and then spring forward 1918 as a way to save time. Some states don't have it, like Arizona doesn't have it. Um, but yeah, it's basically adjusting to seasonal changes and things like that. And it's basically a completely man-made arbitrary thing. And it shouldn't exist, especially when I have to lose an hour of sleep tonight. Um, Let me see. Hello, Andrew. You replace F America, F Israel, but don't F ISIS, right? BB Beater. It's funny how it's B Beater. It's funny how you have a different standard for that. America is bombing countries on behalf of Israel again. Did Kevin, are you just now showing up and did you just decide to spend all of your energy to say something stupid like that? Or did you just come to my channel to say something stupid? Or did you actually, were you here for a while and actually listen to what I said? The history that I expounded. This is not just the US doing what Israel wants it to. In some ways it is, but in some ways it's far more complex than that. I'm disappointed in the lack of Jurassic Park banter in the stream today. I'll continue to be disappointed. Most people do not have banter. By the way, is my feed and microphone, are they good? Can you guys hear and see me okay? Um, Israel wants full power over MENA. What is MENA? Good, I'm glad everything's fine. What is MENA? You mean the Middle East? Middle East and North America? I don't know what you mean by MENA. No, Middle East, North Africa? Okay, I don't usually use that phrase. Middle East, North Africa. Okay, so, and let me ask you, what do the Iranians want? What does the Islamic Revolution in Iran want? What does Hezbollah want? What does Hamas want? What do all these other things want? There's some people who in Israel who are probably for that. The vast majority of them are not. I don't even think the prime minister is necessarily for that sort of hegemony. Um, so, yeah, I'm interested um, in what do the Iranians want, and how does that tie in? You'll bring up what Israel wants, but what do the Iranians want that the U.S. that would concern the U.S. They want Polish folks to go back to Poland. Well, yeah, that's the racist thing that people normally say. Um, that's not what they want. They want to destroy all of them, whether they're Polish or Jewish or whatever they are. They want them dead. And yeah, everybody does want oil, Nachi. That's true. What ways of production did the Industrial Revolution have, like steel creating techniques? The Bessemer press makes it easier to create and use steel. Steel is more durable and stronger than iron. And so basically, the galvanizing of metals, especially steel, makes it a lot easier. Vulcanization, things like this, rubber vulcanization, makes it a lot easier to create and use steel, which, as I said before, is much more durable. So you all of a sudden have a product that can be mass produced that is much easier to use in your buildings, and your infrastructure and your technology get a lot stronger and a lot more and can last a lot longer. Um, so Israel is a bastard modern state. Well, so is Zimbabwe. If you want to go by the definition that it was just kind of thrown together in the last minute in modernization by a bunch of people who live there, that's every country, in especially in the post-colonial world that we live in. America never had any problems in the Middle East until Israel. That isn't true. The Barbary Coast pirates, the Ottoman Empire, the US fought wars against these people. That is not true. Israel's very existence is a challenge to the Middle Eastern geopolitical style, and for radical Muslims, it's an offense to them religiously. Um, Good afternoon, Alcino. How long have you been on? 45 minutes, but it's good to see you. And by the way, for those of you just joining us, like Chicano and Shuriken, we start at 3 now on Saturdays, and that's to respect people like Harry and other people from all over the world. All we learn of history is nothing and repeat it again to make history. Well, if people would just learn, would just take some time to learn, we would actually avoid the mistakes. You wonder why what's going on in Iran is going on. You should really rewatch this if you haven't seen it, Shofi. Um, what is your war? Is this your financial war? I'm not at war. Am I pro-Israel? I'm pro-truth. I'm not a political channel. I'm a historical channel. I'll talk about geopolitics only in the context usually of a super chat, so you're getting what I usually charge for free. Only in the context of what is true and historically, and I give proper historical context to it. And that's what I keep saying. I didn't know America fought the Ottomans. Well, technically speaking, the Great War. Although the US doesn't have as much direct conflict with them, they are at war with the Ottomans. If I am correct, they were at war with the Ottomans. The US fought the Barbary Coast pirates. The Middle East didn't exist until the 1920s, by the way, in the sense of the modern way of the Middle East, didn't exist till the 1920s. So the states of Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, although there's some ancient precedents for all of these peoples in different groups, And Islam is a hallowed and ancient religion. It's almost 1,500 years old. The truth of the matter is that these nation groups didn't exist. It was Ottoman and Safavid domination when the American colonies were being formed, the Kajir Empire in Persia, the Russians and the British fighting for influence in this area, the declining Ottoman Empire, and eventually the British and French create the modern states that we know today. So to say the U.S. wasn't involved in the Middle East, there was no modern Middle Eastern countries. There was no Iran in 1500. There is no, I, excuse me, Iraq. There are peoples that can trace their lineage for thousands of years to these regions, but these states don't exist then. Let me see here. Let me catch up to the chat. Zio wars are historically good for Satan. Ah, for goodness sake, where do these bozos come from? What is truth? Did the Israelis ethnically cleanse Palestinians to establish their state? No. They kicked them out. Well, yes, to some extent. They removed them from the areas they were in. They fought a war. They were attacked by all different Arab countries surrounding them, who, along with the Palestinian fighters, were trying to destroy them. They defeated them and then removed the Palestinians from these areas and forced them out, turning them into refugees, most of whom remained in the region. And the main reason they remained in the region, as I said yesterday, because everybody wants to bring this up. This is a Q&A about history, by the way, but I am talking about history, is because none of the Arab countries, none of the Middle Eastern countries cared enough about them to intervene and make a way for them. Never happened. Um, so yeah. Let me see here. I gotta pay you for you to say your opinion on the genocidal state of Israel. Yeah, you're definitely pro-Israel. You know, it's not that you pay me for that. If you were to ask me, is the Hindu god Vishnu real, which has nothing to do with the what you call the genocidal state of Israel, I would ask for a super chat. I don't like to discuss politics and religion ad nauseum. If you were to ask me about what I think of ICE, I wouldn't share my perspective, but I would give a proper historical context and understanding. I don't like talking about these topics because I want to talk about things that happened 400 years ago, like the Russians being attacked by the Poles and something you've probably never heard of before. That message she made should not have been deleted, by the way. I like the message. Um, the stop deleting messages. Um, to insinuate a racist stereotype about Jews being greedy, to say that I got to pay for my opinion of the genocidal state of Israel, which just gives her opinion and doesn't actually, or his, I don't know, uh, just shows that they're not willing to listen. Israel is not a genocidal state. I'm sorry, but it just isn't. And it's not my opinion on the state of Israel. I have, if you want my real opinion on this, and I'll give this without a super chat, I've said many, many times that there should be a end to fighting and a creation of a two-state solution, which was the radical, moderate, cutting-edge position, liberal position 10 years ago, and now is just seen as too out of date because the Jews have to go. The pro-Pali people have basically bought the lines of radical terrorist groups that would destroy them as soon as the first chance they get, as soon as they're done eradicating all the Jews. When both sides can stop teaching their children to hate, then you can get somewhere. That's idealistic, but it's not impossible. Look at what Mandela said about that after his people set people on fire, but that's neither here nor there. In June 2025, did Israel want to continue bombing Iran, but USA pressured Israel to stop? Yes. I was there. I remember it very well. President Trump, probably his best line, I think, ever was, they don't know what the F they're doing anymore. And who knows, maybe some people think that Trump should return. Jesus, here's some history. Jesus rose from the dead and is alive now and forevermore. Well, I don't know that that's historically proven. Jesus existing, living, dying, and his disciples believing he rose from the dead, certainly all historical. But I don't know that it's historically verifiable. I just don't. I do think that the Gospels do give a rather accurate depiction of the life of Jesus of Nazareth. So I'm sure a lot of people have a lot to say after what I just said, but how do I know what's true? Do you think what they teach us in school is true? Sometimes I feel like if everyone had the same education was never about education but indoctrination. Well, there's some indoctrination to be sure, but that's why you can read primary sources. You can look at archaeology. You can read contrasting opinions and interpretations. We don't normally disagree about the historical facts. We disagree about historical interpretations. And the job of the historian is to tell the truth. If you had a good history teacher, he knew or she knew to tell the truth.
I'm going to try to tell the truth. If I am wrong, I want to be corrected, and I've been wrong plenty of times. Do you think Zionism is bad? If so, is it inherently bad or just bad via the way it is applied? I don't think a group of people wanting. Okay, so nationalism is just a huge facet of the 19th century, the desire to have your own people, have your own country. The Greek nationalism leads to a war and a revolution. The nationalism in Italy leads to a war. The German nationalism leads to several wars. Israeli nationalism leads to a war, and that's the only war we care about. You don't know about the Franco-Prussian War. You don't know about the Italians and Camille Cavour and Garibaldi, Giuseppe Garibaldi, and Napoleon III and what he did. You don't know about the Greek nationalists and what they did to finally get rid of the Ottoman yoke. Those are nationalists who committed many, many, many violent acts in order to achieve their independence. And so did Yuri Ben Gurion and all of the Jews in 48 who fought for Israel to become a country. But you only care about that war because that's the war that everyone wants to pay attention to. And you might not even know much about that war. There is not, I don't know you specifically, but I'm saying you and the people that I deal with who are constantly obsessed with this nonsense. Um, the idea of nationalism is not necessarily a bad thing. If you think nationalism is a bad thing, then sure, Zionism is a bad thing. But that means Americanism is a bad thing. That means nationalism, pride, and the good pride, and the wanting to love your culture in any society is bad. Is Mexican nationalism bad? Is Japanese nationalism bad? Japanese nationalism has their immigration rates so low that they hardly let in anyone else from other countries compared to somewhere like the United States. um, is nationalism bad? And I think that's really why a lot of people defend Israel, even in an indirect way when they don't know it, because they see Israel as a reflection, as a democratic government of the United States. And if you hate the nationalism of the Zionists, you might hate the nationalism of America. And with the left, and with many people who are already critical on the political left of American history, teaming up and morphing into pro-pallies in the last couple of years, it makes absolute sense to me. It is a hatred of nationalism. But we don't see people criticizing Greek nationalism. We don't see people criticizing Italian nationalism. Um, Maybe fascism, but that's a different. I'm talking about nationalism of Italy that got it to be a country in the 19th century. That same nationalism inspired people like Herzl to push for Zionism. Now, does Zionism mean Israeli supremacy over all of the region? That would be an incorrect application of it. But just the idea of Jewish nationalism, which I think is the proper definition of Zionism, um, that is what people hate. That's what people. I don't think that's a hateable thing, but I think a lot of people hate that. Hello, Julian. Jewish. I'm good. Jewish atheist. Good. Glad to have you here. So you believe in limited government, right? Economically, you believe in laissez-faire economics. Fact check me on this. I'm not going to say what I believe politically. Do you think Zionism? Okay, I already answered the question about Zionism. People are deleting messages. What did the message say? Calling it Middle East is colonial language. Middle to what? It is Southwestern Asia. It is the Near East. It is the crossroads between Europe, Asia, and Africa. It is MENA, Middle East, North Africa could also work. It is middle between the Far East and the West. That is how it has been used. That I am only using it for the sake of convenience. The Near East is probably even more accurate. Asking if Zionism is bad is the same thing as asking if Roman Pride is bad or if patriotism is bad. See, noise like 1, 2, 3. You were speaking the same language, and this is not a justification for what Israel has done, by the way. Nor is it a justification for everything America has done. Middle of the three old world continents, I assume. Yes. And what do you think of the belief of the founding fathers that people's rights come from God? Agree or disagree? Um, as someone who has said repeatedly that I believe in a God, yes, I would like to believe that human rights come from that human rights are unalienable, that there are things that we have that we shouldn't lose no matter what. I'm Israeli, but I'm not really traditionally Zionist. Right. But hopefully what I've said is accurate. Why did we time out Nashi? What did she say that was so bad? I actually liked what they were saying. They called me the R word. Is a genocide denying Zionist. I would rather people see that, and I would actually pin it to show just how hateful these people are. This person, for the record, who was asking me questions about Israel and things like that, and I was only answering with historical stuff, called me a retard and said I'm a genocide denying Zionist. So, um, the funny the thing that I find hilarious about that is that I do not deny genocides. I talk about genocides more than anyone else than she does because I talk about Mao's genocide and Stalin and Hitler. I talk about the genocide in Rwanda. I talk about genocides all in Armenia, one that the Turkish government still denies. The Turkish government that is condemning the actions of Israel denies its own genocide against the Armenians. Watch my video, Hars, put my video on the Armenian genocide so this person and everyone else here can learn how much genocide I actually deny. Please put my video on the Armenian genocide in the chat, Hars. But yes, am I a Zionist in the sense that I believe Israel has a right to exist? Yes. Am I a Zionist in that I think Israel should conquer the Middle East? No. The disasters of that. That's why I was saying earlier, I don't want the Dome of the Rock destroyed. I don't want Al Aqsa destroyed. That would be a terrible mistake. But they are symbols of ancient imperial colonialism. So if you're okay with it staying up, you want to take down statues of Robert E. Lee. And the only reason I'm saying this is the same logic or lack thereof that I see from very similar people. You want to take down statues of Napoleon and Churchill, then why not take down Alaska Mosque? I don't want none. I don't want, by the way, my opinion, I don't want either of those things to happen. Alaska Mosque is an extremely important religious site in Islam. The Dome of the Rock is an extremely important site in Islam, and neither of them deserve to be destroyed. But they are trace remnants and reminders of Islamic colonization. Full stop. Yeah. Zionism is a racist ideology. Let me see. Why are we just deleting all these comments? People are allowed to say they support or hate Israel. I'm fine with that. It's interesting how medieval states like the Ottomans, the Holy Roman Empire, and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth still existed when America was founded is neat to me. Yep. Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth kind of falls apart in the 1700s. And the Russians start dividing it with the Prussians. But is there ongoing apartheid impression of the Palestinian people? If your answer is no, come to Heron how lobby. I don't think so. Is there discrimination? Is there a second-class citizenship? Absolutely. There, I have never said that I am against a two-state solution. I love this. I say that Israel doesn't deserve to have its children slaughtered and be wiped off the face of the universe, and because of that, I must love Jews. Yeah, yes, the Oslo Accords were like the best thing for the Israeli-Palestine situation. Yes, they were. Bill Clinton, one of his more brilliant moves, with Shimon Peres, who was more than willing to do it, and Yasser Arafat, who also was willing to do it. And here's the record. Yasser Arafat, an Egyptian nationalist who worked with the Palestinians and identified himself as a Palestinian, though he was not a Palestinian. He settled in the land of Palestine before 1948. That's what made him a Palestinian. That's why Jews in that region were called Palestinians before 1948. Go look it up. Fact check me, bro. Regardless, this guy, Yasser Arafat, who had been against Israel being able to exist and wanted a pure Palestinian state, eventually said, you know what, maybe we can live together in harmony. Clinton was willing to give him about 95% of his demands. So was Shimon Peres and the Israelis. And Arafat walked out of the meeting and said no. And he said, if I do this, they will kill me. Who's they? Not the Israelis. The Israelis were willing to do it, not the Americans. The Palestinians were going to kill him. He was only going to get 5% less than what he wanted, and they would have killed him for it. This is their leader, their head honcho. That is why they need to stop teaching their children on their cartoons and their television that Jews are pigs that deserve to die. And this has nothing to do with Israel's mismanagement of the war in Gaza. Those are two separate categories. I'm willing to believe in two things at once because I have nuance. Or maybe I'm just, the R word. Who is the father of modern warfare? Oppenheimer. I think Oppenheimer changed the way we fight wars because the fear of nuclear weapons influenced exactly how countries fought wars. The reason the U.S. does not aggressively just go in and beat the heck out of the North Vietnamese, which they could have done at any time, why they lose the Vietnam War, is fear of nuclear retaliation. I think Oppenheimer indirectly is the changer of all war. If I'm correct, there used to be a Persian Empire. Whatever empires did they go to war with? How many other civilization empires have they gone against? Oh my gosh, the Persian Empire. There's so many different Persian empires, Chicano. There's the Achaemenids. That's the Persians that Alexander defeats at Gaugamela. They fight the Greeks over and over. Those are the 300 Spartans, the Immortals, those folks. They're the ones, if you're religious, they're the ones that send the Jews back to build the second temple I was talking about earlier. Um, they are the Achaemenid or Medo-Persians, they are destroyed by the Greeks. Then the Parthians emerge after the Greeks leave, and the Parthians are extraordinarily powerful, and the Romans can never beat them. Then they're overthrown by the Sassanids, who could never be destroyed what are they called? The Byzantines. Then after the Sassanids, the Rashtun Caliphate and the Muslims conquer that region for kick out Zoroastrianism and bring in Islam, colonialism. And the people of the region embrace I'm sorry, I'm blanking. And there's the Umayyad and Abbasid caliphates. Later on, there will be the Ilkhanates, and eventually the Persians will reestablish an empire under the 12 Shia Islam brought by Ismail and the Safavids, and then there's the Qajir Empire, which takes over after the Safavids, and that's what gets us all the way to the modern kingdom state that was eventually overthrown in 1979. It's crazy how many times they've gone to war with people. They went to war with the Ottomans a lot. They went to war with the Mughal Empire in India. They fought against the Mongols. I mean, it's crazy. What is the Monroe Doctrine? It's Donald Trump's addendum to the Monroe Doctrine that basically says the U.S. can bully the Latin Americans as much as they want. Um, so you don't want to talk about Iran, Israel, and the Jews, but if we delete any comments about Israel, Iran, and Jews, you tell stop. Well, we're now in a pass of talking about useless things. So I'm talking about I am talking about something that's useless, in my opinion, but I'm talking about it in the historical context. I have remained on the historical side of things. Um, what I'm saying is I would rather let the ignorance stay. If people are spamming and going on about this, then yeah, like yesterday. But people making a few comments and even calling me a few names, I want that to stand. I want people to see how bad these views actually are. Yeah, so the guy saying glory Israel and flags, that's just unnecessary. I don't care about that. How come African Americans are sometimes pretty conservative, but others are pretty liberal in the United States? What's the history to that? African Americans? What do you mean? Pretty liberal? I'm confused what you mean by that. Do you know Satan, Dharma, Hindu religion? Sanatan Dharma Hindu religion. I know a lot about Dharma and Brahma and the creation of the world in Hinduism. It's a wonderful religion. Ethno states are inherently evil to the rest of the world because we are outsiders, they are the chosen. I would have loved for that comment to stay because it's just so ignorant. The ethno states are historically the norm. In modern, they are the black sheep. Um, Let me see here. Um, There is nothing in the definition of Zion which is morally wrong, but again, the status quo had the propensity towards making things go to bad places, and that's what happened. It happens in history. Okay, there was no reason Jewish atheists should have had her comment erased because she was making a good point. But yes, let me see here. Funny thing is, the war in Iran is not really just for Israel. We're preventing China. Yeah, there's a lot in it. One of the reasons the U.S. oil is so expensive is that a lot of the oil that China gets and sells to the U.S. is from the Strait of Hormuz. Let me see. I've been told the difference in Israel's case is that they didn't stop harming the Palestinians following the creation in 1948, but that the oppression still is happening to this day. Yes, there is a level of oppression that is happening to this day. No doubt about it. The settlement in the West Bank doesn't help the situation. You also have a constant fear of the people, the Arabs and Palestinians, destroying them. There is this. It's a difficult and complex situation at that point. It really, really is. What dinosaur question? Let me see. What are you wearing? A dollar store rag? No, it's a smoking jacket, something else. But I'm glad you're ignorant. What is the difference between nationalism and patriotism? Patriotism, I think, is more political, almost in the sense of I love my country and I'm going to wave the flag. These are the actions. Nationalism is the belief in the people who live in this country and the goodness of that cause, the goodness of the cause of your country, the goodness of the people of your country. Nationalism is considered a more extreme form of patriotism, a stronger form of patriotism that says our nation is the best. Not just I love my nation. Patriotism is I love my nation. Nationalism, my nation is the best. That might be it. Although patriots probably do believe my nation is the best or better. Um, They're I think people can be patriots and nationalists at the same time. I think all nationalists are patriots. I just don't think all patriots are nationalists. It doesn't matter what economic system you cheer for. Stakeholder capitalism and the fourth industrial revolution have already made every other system obsolete or choiceless, I should say. Okay, thank you, amazing hot sauce. Please tell us about the Russian naval squadron entering New York Harbor on September 24th and October 6th, 1863. Was that Alexander II sending support to Abraham Lincoln because Abraham Lincoln's the best? Wow, top 10 worst things Henry history was called right behind disingenuous. Yep. I was called a Zionist denying, a genocide denying, retarded Zionist, which I think is really funny because I'm none of those things, except the last one. Um, well, Zionism is a wide spectrum. Not all Jews are Zionists, and not all Zionists are Jews. There are many forms of Zionism. That's fair. And yeah, check out my video on the Armenian genocide. Do you consider the erasure of Native Americans genocide? No, I do not. I take a lot of flack for this one too, but I don't think you can justify it. There's a difference between warfare, extermination, war crimes, human rights abuses, and genocide. The closest you could come is the Trail of Tears. I think that's an example of pure ethnic cleansing, of erasure, a geographic relocation that led to suffering. And there are parallels between that and what happened to the Armenians, but I don't see the rest as actual genocide. The subject is any history you want to talk about. I love the Ottoman Empire. I love talking about it. It's really cool. Let me see. Before 1948, did Jews and Palestinians, Muslims, Arabs, I don't know, live peacefully, or has it always been this volatile? There was some level for peace. Obviously, many Jews lived in the Ottoman Empire and other places quite happily throughout the Middle Ages and early modern period. Um, there were thousands of Jews who lived in the Levant under Ottoman control before Zionism really started. Yeah, it's not impossible. Was it Raban instead of Perez? Was I wrong? Um, Basically, every global conflict now is a result of white Western colonialism. No. China wanting to take Taiwan and taking Tibet has nothing to do with colonialism. It's never been about peace. Islam does not allow for reform since the word of Allah is for all time, so the war against other religions by Muslims will continue. Again, their main victims of their wars are other Muslims. But I guess that's not important to you. What was the original foundation of the Ottoman Empire and what spirit or guiding ideas shaped its creation? Osman. He was a leader of a Turkic tribe who in 1299 started their conquest of the Anatolian Peninsula, or whatever you want to call it, um, and basically built them into the strongest version of the Turkish warriors that there had ever been, and was able to subdue most of that region, then the Middle East, then Greece and Constantinople. Let me see here. Let me see. Who precisely are the Mamluks? They were Egyptian warriors, Islamic sultanate that ruled over large sections of the Middle East in the 13th and 14th centuries. They famously defeated the Mongols. Um, Gustavus Adolphus. Gustavus Adolphus is the king of Sweden who starts the 30 Years' War or gets involved in it. Under Tower and Hugh Hefner wrote, yep, this is the Kremlin. This is the Polish attack of Russia in 1610, and I am wearing my Hugh Hefner smoking jacket. Well, I love my country, just not the decisions they make. So that would be patriotism. Yeah. Um, I'm sure nationalists would hate certain things their countries do too, especially if it's anti-nationalist. Um, they would give Native Americans blankets, but the blankets were infected with, if I'm correct, chickenpox. That happened a few times. It was rare. It's more often that the natives died from diseases that they received unintentionally from the Americans and the others. I hope you're having a good day too, Derek. What do we think about the Highland clearances? I don't know enough about it. Is that when the Scottish were forced off of lands by the British and they were forced to basically become civilized in the 17th and 18th centuries? No, what am I incorrect about lions for lambs? The Ottomans, the Ottomans are not Egyptian. They're Turks. Yep, the English basically decided to civilize the Scots. That's where Rob Roy comes from. He's one of the main resistors there. Somebody said change my background to something American. Okay, I'll change my background to something American. There you go. Supreme Court building to finish the day. I'm in front of the Supreme Court building bringing you friendly neighborhood history. There you go, Diane. Uh, so Longman's have you read Longman's History of USA? No, I haven't, but I probably should. Are Turks Central Asians? Yes. From the steep, so Eurasian. Gustavus Adolphus was widely known as the father of modern warfare, not Oppenheimer. Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, I get that, but I'm gonna go with Oppenheimer because I think there's an even now more modern. You're thinking of early modern. I think of even more modern. I'm well, Joe. I hope you are well. We're actually wrapping up. Which book of history of America is your favorite? Oh, that's a good one. I can't pick one off the top of my head because I read more certain specific topics rather than general surveys. I'd have to look at the general surveys again, the general ones of the general surveys that are out there, and see which one I thought was best. Thank you, Mr. Bill, for joining us at the tail end. This is not my house. This is the Supreme Court building. Please watch my series on the U.S. Supreme Court and all the videos I have there, where I talk in detail about the U.S. Supreme Court and its history from John Jay to now. So to say it was peaceful before Zionism in Israel is such a fallacy. Well, the region of that world was not peaceful before then, regardless of the Jewish presence in that area. Thoughts on Uncle H? Who's Uncle H? Sunni, Shia, and vice versa is a different religion. Yeah, that is why they have conflict. I thought that was implied in my statement, and I mentioned different religions. True. Sunnis will enslave Shiites because Muslims can't enslave other Muslims, but they don't believe that they are proper Muslims. Read my essay. Okay, I'll read your essay. If you're liking this, we're about to wrap up. Please subscribe, but also join us tomorrow for my live stream lecture on Russian history and the end of the Soviet Union. No, it's not boring. I actually like learning about the Supreme Court. It was cool. Which pagan religion did you think was the most powerful in the Middle Ages? I think it was Tigrism. Well, isn't that what the Mongols believed? It would be pretty powerful. It was far more peaceful than it is now. Israel has ignited the region for more than it ever was before. Look up how many wars the Ottomans and the Safavids fought. Do you know what the Mamluks did to the Ayyubids? Do you know what the Umayyads did? Do you know how the Rashidun Caliphate fell? But yes, see us next time. Excuse me. Got a must-read history book. I finished it a while ago. Lucy Whitting's Tudor England. Very, very good if you want to learn about Tudor history and English history in general. Yes, and the Bulgars and Hungarians. Yep. But now the Muslim regions are more united more because of the terror attacks on Iran from the U.S. and Israel. It's funny because they're not. I mean, they're united in condemning it, but they aren't going to do anything. And and people like the Saudis probably are secretly happy about this because now Shiite power is about to be removed. Why be pompous and have no integrity? I don't know. It just works for me. All right. How many wars has Iran started? Iran, in its history, as Persia, if you want to include Persia, Iran, a couple, but Persia, many, many more. So there were just as many wars in Europe, idiot. Why are there no wars in Western Europe now? Why are there no wars in Western Europe now? Because Western Europe is run by people who live in the Stone Ages, who do not have a Stone Age view of tribalism. They are not tribalistic. I'm sorry, but it's just true. The truth of okay, so Turbo, there are many, many wars in Europe, and I never see. This is what aboutism. Well, that region. Your argument has basically been this: that region was just set on fire by the Jews. Well, actually, there were plenty of wars before then. Well, so were there in Europe. Why are you bringing that up? You changed the topic. I never said anything about there are plenty of wars in Europe. There were horrible wars. There were horrific things that Christians did to each other, Europeans did to each other in Europe. Then they got bored and decided to do it to a bunch of other people. My point is that Christianity especially doesn't, and the West in particular, does not live in this medieval approach to tribalistic warfare between the two major sects of their religion. Catholics and Protestants aren't doing this anymore, but Sunni and Shiites are, especially radical ones. So, swarthy. What does swarthy mean? I hope that's a compliment. Yes, Israelites are extremely tribalistic. You're right. Yes, there's 13 tribes of them if you look at the Bible. And I mean, the Israelis, the modern version of that, if you want to call them that, which would connect them 3,000 years in their past, but you don't care about that. They are, but look who, Ben, so is everyone else in that area. Well, of course, some of the Middle Eastern countries are in cahoots, U.S., etc., because they have U.S. bases, so there's coattails. True. And they probably would prefer it if the U.S. wins.
They can condemn it all they want, but they know it's better if the US wins for them. Thank you. I take that as a compliment. Not only was I a history major, I have a bachelor's and master's in history. So, lions for lambs, you are wrong. And I am wearing my smoky jacket. You're a pro-Israel shill, bro. Hope they're paying you enough. I don't pay. I don't get paid anything. I didn't even get a super chat from any of you people. So I don't appreciate that. I'm not getting paid anything from Israel. That's the joke people love to make on this channel. My APAC tracker, but my APAC tracker right now is at 0 because APAC gives me nothing. I'm totally self-funded, and with the generous contributions and the help that you guys give me. I'm not a pro-Israel shill. Everything I've said was just historical. So you committed two logical fallacies. This is just advice for your argumentation. You changed the topic. Actually, you committed three. You missed the point, and then you threw out an ad hominem. Those are all fallacies. And as Plato said, when the debate is over, the loser resorts to whining, complaints, and insults, which is what people have done all day today. So thank you for giving me another dub. Shout out to Spain for not letting the U.S. use any base to attack Iran. Okay. Is Iran a peaceful, wonderful place that the U.S. just mercilessly attacked? Because you didn't watch the early, maybe you just got here, Turbo, but if you watched the earlier, I explain exactly why this is happening. I give all the historical reasoning for it, and I explain that Iran is not a nice place to live for many, many people. 6 to 30,000 protesters killed, not arrested, killed in Tehran in the last few months. Did you just ignore that? So, thank you for the super chat, Derek. I really appreciate it. I'd like to get a smoking jacket. You look quite dapper. Thank you, Mr. Bill. I really like the smoking jacket. I try my best, Derek. I try to be fair. It's happening as the Secretary of State said himself. U.S. dragged into another Middle Eastern conflict by Israel once again. Except that there are so many other reasons for it that's just not that. Israel definitely has their finger on the scale, and the U.S. is doing a lot of what Israel wants, but there is a mutual beneficial symbiotism going on here. You don't believe in proper categories or nuance, or else you would be able to see that. Islam and the synagogue of Satan can burn, but I don't care. The synagogue of Satan, yes. Yes. Calling one religion by its proper name and then using a slur for the other one. Totally fair, as Admiral. Have you really did the research about Iran? And if so, where did you get that information that the protesters, Mossad, and CIA agents were on the ground? Do you know about that did you look into that? I've read the reports. I've looked at the numbers. This has been confirmed by news sources everywhere on both sides of the political aisle. Thousands of protesters, up to tens of thousands of protesters, were killed by the Iranian government. And there have been video footage put out by the Iranian press trying to say, well, these were actually they were sacrificing bulls and they were doing evil rituals and they're satanic and things like that. And it turned out it was festivals. It was festivals celebrating other things in other parts of the world. They even had one where they said, look at how many counter protesters. And it turned out it was an Iranian New Year's celebration from a few years ago. Bro is committing fallacies while telling me I'm committing fallacies. I'm out of here, bro. You're dumb. Please tell me the fallacies you committed. APAC isn't paying me anything. Derek paid me because he's a great guy. But APAC isn't paying me anything. Are you familiar with Colonel McGregor on the Iran conflict? If not, YouTube him. He was great information. He's a foreign military with great insight. Thank you. I will look into him, Mr. Bill. Thank you for being charitable and thoughtful about this entire discussion rather than just slamming me or slamming what you don't believe in. He didn't or pretending to not know what Swarfy meant. I just like hearing how good looking I am. So thank you. Who do you care more about? Killing Iranian schoolgirls than the multiple genocide in Gaza and Sudan and Ethiopia? Oh, for God's sakes, Henry. You just don't know what a genocide is. You don't know how war works. I've said this before. CIA and Mossad were involved. There was burnings of mosques, but no synagogues. Iran has synagogues for you that don't know. Yes, it also has a Jewish population that is extremely oppressed. Yeah, I just love this. It's not argumentation, it's insults. See, El Chicano and Bill bring up actual, okay, this might actually have some teeth to it. There might actually be some going back and forth of this. But when the Iranian government gets community noted for lying about the people who are protesting in the streets and trying to demonize them, this is not a democracy. This is not a free country. Iran is a theocracy. It's a controlled by radical Muslims, and it is a police state. It's a dictatorship. Their press is propaganda. Their own propaganda gets called out for it all the time. From what I looked into, the Jewish population in Iran is not oppressed. They interviewed many there. There is actually a documentary on YouTube about that. Interesting. Well, thank you. It's a police state to dictatorship. It sounds like the United States. Okay, see, this is the whataboutism I don't like. I never said the US is not. I said what Iran is. I am saying that Iran is a police state. The state controls the media. The United States doesn't control the media. You have no evidence to show that. The United States government does not control the media. Now, indirectly, there's definitely influence and manipulation. That's why I've done news segments before. I don't do them as much anymore, but I actually sometimes report the news because people don't report the news accurately. People twist it for their own corporate ends. But the truth of the matter is, pretending that the Iranian news is reporting honestly about the protesters and the counter protesters and the influence of foreign governments, to accept them and not accept the American press is completely ridiculous. One is far more credible, albeit very flawed, than the other. The press is propaganda, sounds like Fox News and CNN. Yeah, those are corporate. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. I don't think you know the difference. I really don't think you know the difference from what I'm saying. Yeah, corporations push their own narrative. Yes, I'm aware of corporations pushing their narrative. We're all aware of that. That's not what I'm talking about. I am saying that see, this is whataboutism. I am not saying that America is pure in any of these things. I am saying that the American media's reporting is far more reliable and far less controlled directly by the state than the Iranian media. That is absolutely true. I have an email, friendlyneighborhoodhistory@gmail.com. You can also join the Discord if you want further discussion. Is there any monstrosities committed to Christianity in Iran? I don't know much. I just like learning. Persecution of Christians, common in this area of the world. Christians are persecuted more than any other group. To say that Iran has religious liberty and freedom is ridiculous because there are Jews and Christians that live there. Again, this is not the whataboutism is absurd. I bring up what the Iranian news and government itself has been caught lying about, and you say, well, that's just what CNN does. Well, yeah, of course it's what CNN does. I'm not aware. Is that a good thing? There's nothing wrong with comparing, but whataboutism is ignoring the point. The point is that Iran is a corrupt police state, and you want to say America is a corrupt police state. I don't agree, but fine. If you want to say that, you can say that. That doesn't change my point. Have you heard of Pegasus? Well, Pegasus is the winged horse from Greek mythology. Last few weeks, gathering of influence billionaires, and they talked about one guy was buying influence from Democrats, and Anderson was buying for Republicans for Israel. They said it. And I'm supposed to care about this? I really am supposed to care about that? I'm not talking about American media. Yeah, everyone and people being obsessed with Jews, it's just absurdity. Our most YouTuber commenters so simple-minded because it has to be box, 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 box. The amount of fallacies committed in the argumentations that I've had with these people is just absurd. Pegasus, Israeli hijacking software. He's going to blame the Jews. I called it. Israeli hack. I don't know anything about it actually. Then, so you brought up something that I don't know. I mentioned the stupid bird, horse bird from Greek mythology, the winged bird or winged horse. So yeah, I don't know anything about it. Obviously, Austin. It's software developed by the Israeli cyber arms company NSO Group that is designed to be covertly and remotely installed on mobile phones running iOS and Android. Wait, are you telling me that secret agencies and paramilitary organizations within the government of different countries, of organized states that are in danger of being eradicated, might try some dubious methods in order to hack into their countries might try to, even countries that are not at existential threat of being destroyed might try to hack into their enemy software and mobile devices? Wow, I didn't know that. And by the way, Ricky, really appreciate the memberships. I want to welcome all of our new members and tell you about you perks you get. Al Chicano is now a member. Finally, he definitely deserves it. So is Lord Butters. Renee Mills, Muffin6961, Stealthy Flame, Ms. Juicy, Ginger's Patriot, and Tale of the Unexpected, as well as Dustin Beat and Al Chicano. Welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. As members, you have your own emojis, you'll have early access to a lot of my videos, and you will have certain perks and extra videos that you get to watch, and we really, really appreciate it. It helps the channel a lot, and we're really glad to have you aboard. Okay, I'm going to catch up to the chat and then wrap this up because I went way over for you guys. Um, oh, look, it's Lion, the anti-white racist anti-Tifa member. Oh, let me see. Um, you got cooked yesterday. Yes, I got cooked yesterday. Except that I didn't. Antonio doesn't realize all world governments that are superpowers do that. Yes. Your opinion on the effect of the Vietnam outcome regarding Khmer Rouge. I don't know how much the Khmer Rouge were influenced. I mean, obviously they're influenced by the communism there, the U.S. mismanagement in Vietnam, the bombing of Cambodia antagonized the situation. The rise of the communists were their own movement in Vietnam that sought to punish anyone with wealth or prosperity, and it led to the killing fields, which killed about 1.5 to 2.5 million people. Huge number of people in Cambodia, so bad that the communist government of Vietnam actually overthrew Pol Pot. One communist group overthrew another. If all Muslim countries went to war with all Christian countries, who would win? Probably the Christian countries. They have the better and more developed militaries. Israel is not exempt from being a-hole. Since 1948, they've been doing terror events in the region for the years, which is why things. Yes, Israel's. I love this. This is the line of the century, folks. Israel is not exempt from being a-holes. When did I ever say that? Every country in human history can be an a-hole sometime. Then take it to the bank with you. If you don't know anything about history, know that. Um, yes, I do like to cook. You did. It's nothing personal, except that I didn't, and it's not personal at all. Yeah, that part is true. If North Korea was attacking Israel, America would go to war with North Korea. If North Korea attacked South Korea or Japan, the United States would go to war with North Korea. War with North Korea is not an unmitigable thing. It really, Israel doesn't matter at that point. Um, to Vietnam's credit, they seem like the only communist nation that hasn't had serious issues. No, they had really serious issues. They did terrible repression of the people after Saigon fell. They moderated, similar to China, in the 1990s and then became an economic powerhouse because of their trade with the US. Is it okay to call out everybody, no matter what, who it is, no matter what country, no matter what religion? And Israel, Jews are not exempt. And when did I say they were exempt? When did I not call them out? In fact, was corrected on USS Liberty, and I went into a deep explanation in the next live stream about what the USS Liberty was and why it happened. I didn't say you said they were a-holes. I'm just saying the point that, but in my sentence there, I didn't say you said. I'm just saying, okay. I'm glad you love the channel, Andy. Was Achilles mythical? Probably based on a real person, but mythical. There you go again. I'm not saying you saying they're exempt. I'm just making a general point. You made your point. Well, you made your point. Israel's done bad things. And I love having you here. So, anyways, please like and subscribe. I'm going to sign off now. I hope you all have a really great rest of your evening. Check out all the content that we have available for you, especially our new members. Thank you, Ricky, for providing that. I do not care to be liked online. That's strange behavior. I'm not here to make friends, Lion. I don't know why you call me Lion. I will take the compliment that I am a lion. So, but Vevicte, you should really check out my channel and the content that's available for you because there's a lot of history that I don't think you know that you should learn. Um, mm, so, um, every country's a bit hypocritical to some extent. Free Iran from Zionism or the radical Islam that has doomed its country. Um, who do you mean? I'm confused. I would be glad to be called Lion though, Vay. So I hope to see you guys soon. Um, yeah, well, the chicks aren't all over me all the time, but I'm sure, Mr. Bill, you have more riz than I do. I hope everybody has a great rest of their Saturday. Use some of the information to impress your friends or maybe the love of your life when you go out partying tonight. Stay safe out there. Join us tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, for our live stream lecture, and check out all the time, all the great stuff that we have for you tomorrow on the channel, as well as our live stream lecture on the Soviet Union and its history and fall in modern Russia tomorrow. Take care, and we'll see you then at 4 p.m. Eastern. Have a great